Well, hello there, everyone. I know I usually play card games on this channel, but, sometimes you have to deal with real-world stuff. In this case, politics. I know to a lot of you, politics is a toxic and complicated thing that you don't want to deal with. And I completely understand the sentiment. I don't particularly like dealing with it either. I didn't for a long time. But, that really is kind of a tragedy. Because if you're an American, you are the government. At least you're supposed to be. Our entire system is built on the idea of citizen participation. And yet for some reason, it's become taboo and painful to talk about politics. There's probably already people down in the comments typing about how I shouldn't be talking like this. And honestly, I can't help but feel like that's the most undemocratic, un-American thing you can think. Like, the system only works when we talk about politics. If regular people don't get involved in this kind of stuff, then the only people left to make decisions will be the extremists. So, I hope you don't mind if I just weigh in on this. I'd like to talk about the upcoming presidential election between Trump and Biden. Obviously, if you're not in the United States, or you've already made up your mind about who you're going to vote for, then by all means, feel free to ignore this video. I'm making this mostly for my fellow Americans out there who are undecided, or who just honestly haven't been paying attention to politics and would like the opinion of someone who pays a lot of attention to politics. Anyway, the main thing I'm worried about is Trump. No real big surprise there. There's a lot of people who don't like the guy, and there's a lot you can criticize him for, but the one thing in particular that I'm worried about has nothing to do with his political policies or the way he talks or how many lies he does or doesn't tell, and it has everything to do with how he's using presidential power. Now, just as a very basic refresher, for anyone who forgot or just doesn't know, the federal government has 3 branches, which are all supposed to have 3 very specific jobs. There's Congress, who makes the laws, there's President, who enforces those laws, and there's the Supreme Court that kind of figures out how all the laws interact with each other. The key point here is the president isn't supposed to make the laws. He's just supposed to enforce them. I feel like a lot of people forget about that, even though we all learned it in school. Like, presidents and presidential candidates will often give promises about all the things they will do, which is really kind of weird when you think about it, because there's not a lot they can do. Their actual power's pretty limited. It was designed to be limited. The founders didn't want one person deciding what policy is. That's what a king does. They wanted a democratically elected Congress voting on what to do. Basically, if you want to think of the United States as a business, the president isn't the owner of the business. He's just the shift manager. Congress actually decides what company policy is. They set all the rules. The president is just there to manage the employees, which in this case are the departments. The departments don't get a whole lot of attention in schools, at least I was barely told about them, but they're how the president actually gets stuff done. Like, if Congress passes a law saying it's illegal to use certain pesticides on crops, the president doesn't go down and check every farm to see if John Farmman is using the right pesticides. He delegates that to the Department of Agriculture, which is this big organization that deals with farms and shit. Currently, there's 15 departments. I don't know why I'm holding 10 hands up. There's 15 departments, each with their own specialty. The Department of Education covers America's schools. The Defense Department is essentially just the military. And the Department of Homeland Security is all about protecting America's borders and airports from foreign threats. Now, while I'm explaining this, I should also point out that even though the president manages the departments and even chooses who's in charge of them, he doesn't get to decide what the department is for. Each department was created by a law where Congress specifically said, "We established this department, and here's what we want you to accomplish with it." Alright, so now that we're all caught up on the basics of how the government is supposed to work, I want to talk about something that happened back in August. The Department of Homeland Security, which I'll remind you is supposed to be guarding our borders and airports from foreign threats, was sent into the city of Portland to arrest American citizens. If you didn't see it on the news, it was actually kind of scary. There were federal troops rolling up in unmarked vans and just hauling people away at gunpoint. And whether you want to say those people were legal protesters or violent rioters, you have to admit that they weren't a foreign threat, and Portland's not an airport. Nor is it on the border. It's nowhere even near the border, not unless you count the Pacific Ocean as a border. And I don't think we should, because the ocean's not a country. No one's coming in to attack us from the ocean. My point is, Homeland Security was not supposed to be there. That's not their job. And the fact that they were there means the president does not care what the departments are supposed to be used for. He'll use them however he wants. Which, I mean, just to be blatant, is an abuse of power. It's one guy deciding that he knows better than the elected people and taking decisive action. Which, decisive action in the movies can be really cool and dynamic, but real life doesn't work out that way. And it didn't work out that way here. Sending troops into Portland didn't fix the situation, it escalated it. It made it worse. When people are angry about the police having too much power and not enough oversight, sending in more powerful police with less oversight isn't going to calm things down. It's just going to convince even more people they need to protest, and it's going to make the existing protesters even angrier. There's a reason we have checks and balances. It's to stop people in power from making decisions like this. It was a bad move, and unfortunately, that's not the only department that our president is misusing. If you're unaware of it, the Department of Justice is the organization in charge of traditional law enforcement things. If someone sues the government, or the government sues someone else, the DOJ handles that. They're also in charge of organizations like the FBI that are responsible for investigating big national crimes. This includes investigating the government itself. When former presidents Nixon and Clinton were doing some shady shit, Congress asked the DOJ to investigate the president. And the department did, because even though the president manages those departments, their loyalty is ultimately to Congress and the Constitution, not the president himself. Now, the leader of the Department of Justice is a guy called the Attorney General, which the president gets to pick. And the guy that Trump picked to be the Attorney General has made it his official stance that an acting president cannot commit crimes. There was actually an investigation last year. You may recall hearing something about a Mueller report. Well, Mueller was a guy in the Department of Justice who was in charge of investigating Trump for a whole bunch of shady things. And he basically ends his report by saying, "The president is not innocent because it's very likely he obstructed justice. However, we cannot call him guilty of a crime because the president cannot commit crimes. Therefore, we are not charging him with anything." That same report also repeatedly states that the only real way to check the president's power is through impeachment, that Congress is the only one who can check the president. You might also recall that Congress tried to impeach Trump earlier this year, and it didn't really work. And that's at least partially because when Congress tried to call the president and his aides to testify, they refused. And when Congress asked the Department of Justice to subpoena the president to make him come in, they also refused. When you can't make the witnesses come in, it's hard to have a trial. Can you perhaps see how this might be a very serious problem? Look, I'm not a very excitable or anxious guy. I may play up my enthusiasm in the videos, but anyone who's actually met me can tell you that I'm a pretty calm and rational guy. I don't buy into hype, and I don't get frightened very easily. Which is why, when I tell you that Donald Trump is a legitimate threat to our democracy, I hope you'll take me seriously. Because I'm not some liberal news organization pushing an agenda, and I'm not some overly emotional SJW who just thinks Orange Man is bad. I'm a calm, rational guy who would rather be playing Yu-Gi-Oh!, but I'm seeing some shit from our government that has me seriously worried we're heading towards a dictatorship. And I think we need to do something about it. History has shown us that every time you give one person too much power, it goes badly. Very, very badly. Not just for the guy in charge, not just for the minorities or for the people who are into politics, but for everyone. The entire country goes down when you let one person do too much, and Donald Trump is trying to do way too much. Now, don't get me wrong, Joe Biden is pretty shit. He's bland, I don't like most of his policies, and I don't much care for his running mate either. But I mean, that's the thing, he's bland. He doesn't have a cult of personality like Trump does. He's a Democrat, and half the Democrats I know can't stand the guy. But that's why he needs to be president right now. We're at a point in our nation's history where the president wields way too much power, and a charismatic, ambitious person is going to be able to exploit the hell out of that for their own personal benefit. Biden is neither of those things. He's got the charisma of stale toast. He's not going to be able to find anyone who's loyal to him personally. And even if he does, there are so many people willing to pounce on him for the slightest mistake that he won't actually be able to do anything. And that's the point. We need him as president right now. Not because he's going to solve our problems, but because he'll allow us to solve them. You remember what I said at the beginning? If you're an American citizen, you are the government. We, the people, have the power. Or at least we're supposed to. Right now, it doesn't feel that way. The system is fucked, and it's been that way for a while. Every president in my lifetime, Democrat or Republican, has expanded presidential power, which means removing our power. Trump is not the one who caused this mess. He's just taking advantage of it. Our real issues go a lot deeper. Our voting system is terrible and outdated. Most political positions have no term limits. Literally, every single politician either accepts money from millionaires or is themselves a millionaire. And our two-party system forces us to vote for the lesser of two evils instead of someone we'd actually want to vote for. These are all things that everyone kind of knows that we need and would be really easy to implement. And yet they're not getting done because most of us aren't talking about it. This is why we need to shake off the idea that politics is some rude or dangerous thing to bring up. Because despite everything that divides us, there's a lot of important stuff that we all agree on. Things that we could fix if we all just demanded that they be fixed. It's a frustrating time to be alive, I know. We're gonna need a lot of reforms if things are ever going to improve. And that starts with electing Biden. Trump is not a candidate of compromise. He won't back down on anything. He won't admit he's wrong, even if the whole country is against him. If we, the people, want to have any hope of taking back this country, we can't have him standing in our way. So get out there this November and vote. Vote for Joe Biden, or if you really can't stand the guy, vote third party. Just make Trump lose. And make him lose by such large margins that no one will be able to deny it. And once he's out, be prepared to demand change from Biden. The next 4 years are going to be tough regardless of what happens. But if we work together, we can make it better. We can get through this. if more people get more active in politics, we can actually make America great. Not through walls or trade deals, but by fixing our institutions and bringing the power back to the people where it belongs. I believe we can do this. So thank you for listening. Stay safe. And good luck out there.